Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. I spent all day fact-checking the now famous, infamous, whatever you call it, interview between Don Lemon and Elon Musk. I have, as for now, and perhaps you will be commenting, and I would love to hear from you what you think about it. I have the snippets of 14 topics altogether, and 8 of them, Elon is not correct, and 4, he is correct. To my surprise, some things, especially regarding election. Again, we have all the receipts, so we will be checking it all together. Again, would love to hear from you because the intention here is to learn together. Because what I realized, and I was not born in the United States, but I'm voting in the United States. So for me, it was really eye-opening to start researching how does it actually work. Because sometimes we tend to judge people because we like them or we dislike them. And of course, if we talk about Elon or we talk about Don, those are very well-known people. And of course, if you tend to land on left or right or whatnot, you will come with a certain judgment or opinion into the conversation. So the idea is to learn together, to listen to some snippets, and then to analyze it. I'm not tending to say who is the winner, who is the loser, but let's also talk about the PR perspective from this interview, or what actually resulted in it, what could have been the intention, because again, we're not these two people. We have never seen any contracts. We have never seen any communication that was between them other than what they showed us. So we can only guesstimate. But if anything, we can always proof and fact check. So the first thing, the interview started where Don stated the purpose of this interview and why he is doing it on X, where Elon did or made his first statement. Here we go.
Well, I think I see the X as it's already the number one source of news in the world. So it is the number one way that people actually are informed about any kind of news, meaning real-time events, is on the X platform, formerly Twitter.
Okay, so is it true? Actually is. So proportion that have used Twitter or now X for any purpose and for news in the last week. So if we look at it for Northern Europe, same as Western Europe for any other purpose, is bigger than the news. Again, it's the most used platform. It's the fastest platform to get the news on, but then people go and research it everywhere else as well. So, but I'm not sure if you can really go to Instagram or Facebook. There is no data as for now, specifically 2024, as to how much those platforms are used for the news. But yes, Twitter, according to statistics in 2023, is the most used platform for the news. Okay, if we go through here as well, Eastern Europe, you see not that much for the news, more for any other purpose. I think there's also a language barrier as well. But when it comes to, here we go, Africa, Asia, you see Asia is sort of well-balanced, goes here for the news. I'm not sure if we can include any countries where any American media is actually not reachable. But again, those are the facts. He sort of was right. Again, if we think about Latin America, it's well-balanced-ish. For any other purpose, for the news, is quite popular. US, you see it for yourself. So Canada, for instance, 19% goes for any purpose, 11 for news, 25 in the US for any purpose, 14 for the news. I think Twitter also does compete with any mainstream media. So if you do have an iPhone, you constantly are ringing your phone and you get a CNN or Fox News, whatever you subscribe to, you get the news this way as well. But then, perhaps you go to social media or you click on that article to read the news. So he is not wrong here. Okay. So number 2 is the second topic, Don started asking questions as to did Elon meet Trump and how did that go? So let's listen to what Elon has to say here. Here we go.
Leading into this is about MAGA. And speaking of MAGA, you recently met with Donald Trump in Florida. What did you guys talk about?
I was at a dinner. I was not done. I was at a breakfast at a friend's place, and Donald Trump came by. That's it.
So you didn't go there to meet him?
No, I went to a friend of mine's house, and it said Donald Trump's coming by for breakfast. Is that just so you know? Like, okay, fine.
What did you discuss?
I don't. Let's just say he did most of the talking.
What did you say?
I mean, he was randomly at a breakfast in Palm Beach, Florida, where the breakfast or whatever was organized by Republican donors, political people, lobbyists, and he just stumbled upon the breakfast and they said, oh my God, you know, Don is coming, meaning Donald Trump. Would you mind? He's like, oh, of course not. He's going to entertain us. I mean, honey, we can't BS anybody, but let's not be kind of delusional here. So it was reported by first New York Times and then CNBC that on March 3rd, on Sunday, again, Sunday breakfast, random in Palm Beach, Florida, where Elon doesn't live. That, you know, kind of doesn't really come together. But he was meeting Donald Trump there. What they discussed, again, we weren't there. Let's stick to the facts. But did he donate? Allegedly not. We have no information that he actually did. He is denying it here. But to say that he was randomly at some house and then, you know, Donald Trump just stumbled upon and then, you know, didn't ask for anything during election season. No, let's stick to false, right? If I'm correct. Number 3 topic was Don started asking questions about the election as to where does Elon land, and meaning right or left, and that's Elon's answer right here. There we go.
Are you going to loan him money to help pay his bills?
No,
Not at all. Pay his legal bills.
I'm not paying his legal bills in any way, shape, or form.
And he did not ask you for money.
And he did not ask me for money.
Are you going to? So you're not going to endorse a candidate?
I may, in the final stretch, endorse a candidate, but I don't know yet. I want to make a considered decision before the election, and if I do decide to endorse a candidate, then I will explain exactly why.
Are you leaning towards anyone?
No.
You're not leaning towards anyone. Because you've been
Let me say I'm leaning away from Biden.
You're leaning.
I've made no secret of that.
Yes, and there is no secret. So here's the tweet from Elon in 2022, April 2022. He said, for Twitter to deserve public trust, it must be politically neutral, which effectively means upsetting the far right and far left equally. And then he posts now, March 15, 2024, there is either a red wave this November or America is doomed. Imagine 4 more years of this getting worse. So to say that he is leaning away from Biden, he is endorsing a red wave. And again, it's up to you where you are landing. I'm just presenting the facts for you so you can decide, right? It also doesn't matter what I think. What matters is leaning away from Biden and actually saying that either we do have a red wave or we will be doomed. Those are 2 different things. And I think you agree. Okay, so this was a bit of BS. Now I will be skipping the topic about Tesla, Roadster, SpaceX, gaming as relaxation, because again, I'm not following Tesla releases. You know, he said there will be a car that will be probably flying or maybe not. So it was sort of like this cat and mouse play with Don. Not sure. I had the feeling that Don wasn't really informed about Tesla either. He just wanted a headline, which didn't really come through there. So again, Elon is the first person to tell you what's happening with Tesla, so I don't want to speculate there. In terms of gaming as relaxation, they talked about Fortnite and that Don's cousin or whatnot is playing also games, and then Elon said it's wonderful. You play against other people, even if you're in different countries. So let's leave it at that. This was just, I would say, chit-chat. Then we go into the drug use idea. why Don discussed it, we kind of sort of can understand because Elon tweeted about it. Now, the way Don discussed it, this is something that I personally do not agree with. But again, let's go through the motion. So this is our fourth topic. So here we go. That's the first video.
Do a lot of it at night, like late at night. So when you're doing this, are you sober when you do it?
Almost
Are
always,
you
yes.
under the influence of anything?
No, I don't drink. I don't really. No.
So you got no drink, no smoke, no nothing. I mean, you smoke pot with Rogan.
I had one puff.
Yeah.
I think anyone who smokes pot can tell I don't know how to smoke pot.
But you've admitted that you have a ketamine prescription.
Yeah.
What's that for?
Well, I mean, it's pretty private to ask somebody about a medical prescription, you know. But I think it's something I'd say, like, there are times when I have sort of I don't know, like a negative chemical state in my brain.
So where does this come from? Is this tweet? This was June 27th, 2023. Elon tweeted, "Depression is overdiagnosed in the US, but for some people, it really is a brain chemistry issue. But zombifying people with SSRIs for sure happens way too much. From what I've seen with friends, ketamine taking occasionally is a better option." Now, let's dig into what is ketamine, so we kind of know what we're talking about. So the drug is approved for use in humans for two purposes: as an injectable that acts as a short-acting anesthetic, and as a nasal spray to treat depression, known by the brand name Spravato, though only a molecule of ketamine called esketamine, right, that's used in smaller doses is active in Spravato. Sometimes it's distributed illegally, mostly after being stolen from veterinary clinics, charming, or smuggled through the border. Food and Drug Administration warned about increased use of ketamine and compounded forms of the drug or versions that are combined with other ingredients. So it is a drug. It is a serious thing. It's not something that you use recreationally. Again, you know, Elon came from the point where he wanted to share something that helps him, as he says, again, it's not my words, that he wanted, you know, to share with others who might be suffering from depression, to say that you can take this thing instead of drugging yourself further. So that is the idea. Now, Don was not satisfied with this answer. So he proceeded to ask more. So here we go.
Doing it under a doctor's care, right?
Yeah. Literally a prescription from an actual, a real doctor, not like, you know.
Yeah, but do you feel like you ever abuse it?
I don't think so. If you use too much ketamine, you can't really get work done. So I have a lot of work. So I'm typically putting in, like, you know, 16-hour days. That's normal for me, and it's rare for me to even take off a weekend day. So I don't really have, like, you know, a situation where I can be not mentally acute for an extended period of time. Like, I can't really get wasted because I can't get my work done.
So how often do you take it?
Well, it'd be like a small amount once every other week or something like that.
But there's not on the bottle where it says take this dose this many times a week or whatever. If it's not a doctor's
dose. And there are several weeks will go by where I don't use it.
You don't use it.
Yeah, I think it's just, like I said, I think what I find ketamine is if you like literally like a chemical state in your brain that you can't just think yourself out of, then ketamine is helpful for getting you out of a depressive mind state.
You suffer from depression, or you have a depressive mind state? And I asked you as someone who has suffered from depression.
I wouldn't say that I wouldn't say that I have like a case of like extended depression. It's just once in a while I get into a negative sort of chemical mind state. Once in a while, it's not a common thing, but once in a while it does happen.
Where do you think that comes from?
I think it's just genetic, basically.
You think it's just genetic history?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, some people are just wired to be happy all the time. Some are unfortunately wired to be sad a lot of the time. And in my case, I'm generally pretty positive and optimistic, but once in a while.
So I must say, I'm not Elon's fan, right? I'm not a that, the part of his crew that tweets and all of this. But at this point, I started feeling bad for him because I don't understand why are we talking that much about it. Because one thing is, he tweeted something about a drug that is pretty serious, right? Without any further explanation, which can cause some people to go on whatever market and purchase it for themselves because their big hero said something. So now I don't understand Don's idea of digging deeper into it, where, first of all, it's pretty sick to watch somebody explaining their sickness, right? And on the other hand, you did ask why he shared this information. He said, well, I meant good pretty much with it. Why are you digging deeper? Now, if we think about all the people who are clueless and would just copy their hero, now you're actually giving people more information. So I don't understand what the point was. But now Don shifts into, okay, you're taking drugs. What does Wall Street or what do Tesla investors think about it? And that's the third clip on this topic.
Yeah. Do you ever worry that this may get in the way of your government contracts and clearances, and also and Wall Street as well?
Well, from a standpoint of Wall Street, what matters is execution. Are you building value for investors? Tesla is worth about as much as the rest of the car industry combined, from nothing. So that's pretty good.
Well, so Wall Street is not really very happy, reported by Wall Street Journal before. He's used illegal drugs, worrying leaders in Tesla and SpaceX, and his use of ecstasy, mushrooms, ketamine could harm his company. So that was reported before. This was not how the question was formed or asked. Now he had to explain why, he's taking whatever. And if we came to the point where it was prescribed by a doctor, so it is sort of a well-known and official fact that he's using something, right? Don did not dig about other illegal drugs or recreational drugs. He started just talking about this prescribed drug and how it does affect something. I think there's more than one person working at any company, whether it is governmental institution or no, who's taking something. And again, I'm not defending Elon. I was actually getting into this fact checking, thinking like, oh my God, this guy is just delusional. But as far as we go from one point to another, I kind of see the picture and let's go through it together. So for me, it's a learning process as well. So now we pivot from the ketamine. And by the way, here I took a note. My take was, on Elon's case, stop answering if the person is not really genuinely interested in your health, but is actually digging for a headline. You're digging yourself more deeper into it. I don't know about you. Let me know what you think. But if somebody would ask me about my situation, I would say, well, this is very private. How about we move on? Or are you a doctor? Or are we here at a conference or a show where we discuss health issues? And so this will have a purpose. What's the intention behind this digging? A headline. And today, as you saw, a bunch of news came up with, ideas. Again, not Elon's fan, but they say, well, he just said, ketamine is great for Wall Street. Let's stop flipping stuff. This is not what he said. So how can we can only find common ground if we keep sticking to something that is more or less truthful rather than flipping things around. That's not going to bring us further. So number 5 is they start talking about undocumented immigrants and that they can vote even without having social security number or actually being here illegally. So that's the first.
Some of the things that you post, a great replacement theory. You claim that Democrats, President Biden's immigration plan to open up the border, you said that the president is getting, and Democrats are doing it to get more votes. But undocumented immigrants cannot vote in federal elections. So how is that possible?
Right.
Okay. Which was a big surprise for me because I'm an immigrant. And before I had my citizenship, I didn't even dare, because I read that fine print where it says like you go to jail if you dare to vote somewhere. Mind you, I'm in New York City, right? So we might be different. So let's dig into this. This is a learning process for me. So first, this is a site called Verify. They do verify a bunch of different websites, so US Code, USA.gov, Ballotpedia, right? Put glasses on here. Okay. So, and what they say, are undocumented immigrants allowed to vote in some local elections? Again, local, right? Don was talking about federal. We're talking about local. It is true, yes, more than a dozen allow undocumented immigrants to vote in some or all local elections. Again, the key word is local. Then what they found is federal law does not prohibit non-citizens, including those who are undocumented and not authorized to legally live or work in the US, from voting in local or state elections. Okay, local and state. While no states grant undocumented immigrants the right to vote in state elections, more than a dozen nationwide allow undocumented immigrants to vote in local elections. Okay, so U.S. code makes it legal for any non-citizen to vote, blah, 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 for federal office. No state grants non-citizens the right to vote in statewide elections. So the point is, the key word here is local. Okay, so local, yes, federal, no. Verify confirmed that the language of 13 of these municipalities' laws include undocumented immigrants among the non-citizens allowed to vote. The other 4 allow non-citizens to vote, but not undocumented immigrants. So then the talk is about San Francisco, Oakland in California, Washington, D.C., and 10 communities in Maryland. All 10 of Maryland communities are within the 2 counties that directly border Washington, D.C. Some of this, San Francisco and Oakland, only allow their undocumented residents and other non-citizens to vote in local school board elections, and only if they are parents of children attending the local school district. Others, such as Washington, D.C., allow non-citizens to vote for offices such as mayor, council member, as well as referendums. So here, Elon is not really right. Okay, so you cannot vote in federal elections, and but to play devil's advocate, he said he agrees they can't vote. But how about House of Representatives and the board of or the federal election? How can they actually, or how can undocumented immigrants or illegal immigrants still affect the Okay, what a shit show. We're live. Thank you for being back. You lost me, I lost you. Great to have you back. So what we discussed, actually, or where we stopped, is when Don started asking about replacement theory and how is it connected to voting, and then Elon meant that somehow immigrants, also illegal immigrants, can still affect federal elections even though they're not allowed to vote. Okay, so that's where we stopped, and thank you so much for being back. Sorry that I dropped you. So here we go. Here's the clip.
You're conflating two things. One is great replacement theory. The other is, which I don't subscribe to that. I'm simply saying that there is an incentive here. If legal immigrants, which I think have a very strong bias to, at least everything I've read, it's a very strong bias to vote Democrat. The more that come into the country, the more they're likely to vote in that direction. But it is, in my view, a simple incentive to increase voters, Democrat voters. And yeah, so the question is like how? So there's a few ways that this works. One is that when the census is done, the census is based on all people in an area, whether they are citizens or not. So if there are a concentration of people who came here illegally in a particular state or in a particular state, that state will actually then get an increased number of House seats. So the House seat apportionment is proportionate to the number of people, not the number of citizens. So the illegals overwhelmingly go to places like California and New York, and if you just look at the math, if you look at the apportionment with and without illegals, I believe California would lose. I believe the blue state, there would be a net loss of blue states of approximately 20 seats in the House.
And so my first reaction was, what a pile of hot mess. Okay, so probably he's not right. But then let's dig into it. So the Center for Immigration Studies said that the impact of legal and illegal immigration on the apportionment of seats in the U.S. House of Representatives in 2020 showed that in Article 1, Section 2 of the U.S. Constitution, it does require that a census be taken every 10 years, right? So for that reason, we're looking at the 2020 census, right? Each state is assigned the one seat it is required to receive, and the remaining 385 seats are allocated based on each state's share of the total U.S. population, excluding the District of Columbia, right? Immigrants, referred to as the foreign-born by Census Bureau, include naturalized citizens as well as non-citizens, such as green card holders, foreign students, and guest workers. Okay, so here we have to account for census. If you're just tuning in, thank you so much. Now, what we're accounting for census, again, naturalized citizens as well as non-citizens, such as green card holders, foreign students, and guest workers. It also includes illegal immigrants counted in the census. Immigrants also have U.S.-born children. The presence of all of these individuals has a significant impact on the distributions of seats in the House of Representatives and votes in the Electoral College. This report examines that distribution. So, under current policy, all persons, not just citizens, are included in the population count when apportioning seats to states in the U.S. House of Representatives and for votes in the Electoral College, which is based on House seats. Okay, so it does affect whatever Elon stated that illegals or immigrants altogether do still affect the number of seats a particular state gets in the House of Representatives is true. Whatever, it's just a simple fact checking. So, for instance, Ohio will have 3 fewer seats in 2020 than it otherwise would have had, but for the presence of all immigrants and their minor children in other states, right? Michigan and Pennsylvania will have 2 fewer, and so on and so forth. So again, this information here can be found on Center for Immigration Studies that did evaluate the impact of immigration and where immigrants do land or live on the census and how it actually affects the House of Representatives and so on and so forth, right? So of the 26 seats that will be lost, this again 2020, 24 are from the states that voted for Donald Trump in 2016. So to Elon's point, immigrants do usually tend to be in Democratic or blue states, which does add to the number of seats in the House of Representatives. So it is true. Now, Electoral College. So now let's get to the next video. Now let's dig deeper into now the federal election.
This also applies to the Electoral College. So you say, like, well, this also applies to electing the president, because the electoral votes are also done by apportionment the same way that House seats are done.
But the reason, Elon, the Electoral College is in place is to balance that, is so that doesn't happen. So what you're saying about it is the exact opposite of the reason why the Electoral College is there. The Electoral College at this point, in our history, gives people who are in smaller states and red states much more of an influence over our elections than people who are in blue states, and the majority of the people in this country. That's what the Electoral College does. It actually does the exact opposite of what you're saying.
Okay, now let's dig into it. There are two types of voting results, right? The popular vote and the electoral vote. The popular vote is the total number of votes cast for a candidate by voters in 50 states. Electoral vote is what it sounds like: the votes cast for a candidate by each state's electors, right? So now we go deeper. First of all, what is Electoral College? Established in Article 2, Section 1 of the U.S. Constitution, the Electoral College is the formal body which elects the president and vice president, blah, blah. So, but wait, so when people vote for president, they're really voting for an elector from their states. They are the ones who cast the votes that decide the election. Each state has as many electors in Electoral College as it has representatives in the House and senators in Congress. The District of Columbia has 3. So to Elon's point, since immigrants do count for census, which does affect the number of seats a state gets in the House of Representatives, they also do affect the number of electors that each state has. So do they have to vote a certain way? Well, it depends on the state. In 29 states, there are laws requiring that electors vote in the same as the people who voted for them. Most of the time, they vote as expected, but in rare cases, they have changed their vote and voted for a different candidate than the people who voted for them. Okay? In some states, by the way, you have to pay a penalty if you do that as an elected person. So those who are in support of this, they say the current process protects states' rights. The U.S. is, after all, a republic of states, and each one should be able to apportion its electorate as it sees fit. And the Electoral College keeps high population states and regions from deciding the presidency without the blah, 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 blah. So that is sort of Don's point, right? And now those who are prefer elections be determined by the popular vote say it's possible that the winner may not receive the popular votes, the most popular votes. This has happened 5 times. Also, that under the electoral system, some votes count more than others. For instance, in 2012, there were less than 200,000 people per electoral vote in Wyoming, but more than 700,000 people per electoral vote in Texas. So, okay, let's go further. Now, some folks, Edwards Davidson, introduced the bill to stop illegal immigrants from skewing congressional representation and electoral college votes. This was introduced January 30th of this year. So U.S. Congressman Chuck Edwards, North Carolina, introduced the Equal Representation Act to stop the inclusion of illegal immigrants in the count toward congressional district appointment and the Electoral College map. Congressman Warren Davidson in Ohio is co-leading this legislation. So it is true, and which was really eye-opening for me. Again, from my perspective, I would never dare to vote because I'm reading the fine print. But as long as you're not citizen, now I'm a citizen, I can do it. Now, again, what we learned today, even from this brief information that I sort of put together, some states allowed to vote on local level. Some states allowed to vote even on state level. On federal level, no. But illegals or immigrants do account for a total population, which does affect the number of seats in the House of Representatives and the Electoral College. So, kinda Elon is right. Dawn is, I don't know, swimming in information. So that was kind of eye-opening for me. Now, my counterpoint would be then, why then, if assuming this is all true, right? And this is true, according to research. Now, why does Texas and Florida fly the illegals to New York City, Rhode Island, and everywhere? So wouldn't that be just a game changer to keep the illegals in Texas and Florida? So you're receiving money, right, to keep them there. So why you keep flying them away? So that's sort of my thought process. What do you think? Okay, so let's go now to number 8. Let's dig actually deeper. What is replacement theory, right? Because Dawn asked the question connected to voting, connected to everything else. Meanwhile, replacement theory is a bit different, a lot different. So let's see how he first and foremost connects it, and then we study as to what this actually is. And this is number 8. Here we go.
So listen, let's talk more about the Great Replacement, because the first time that you posted on X about this Jewish conspiracy, you ended up apologizing.
I didn't call it a conspiracy. I just said that there's a simple matter of incentives. You don't need a conspiracy when you have basic incentives. In my view, there's a basic incentive that's fundamental that for the Democrat Party to foster and usher in a large number of illegals. Yeah. And you don't need a conspiracy in that case because you have a very basic incentive. You could say I'm wrong about that incentive, but that's my view. I'm not buying into buying some great replacement theory. I'm simply saying there appears to be a very clear incentive for Democrats to maximize the number of illegals because it helps them win elections.
I'm talking about the Great Replacement theory is also part of a Jewish conspiracy theory. And when you did the tweet, or you responded to the tweet about that, you ended up apologizing, and which I think is, it's good that you ended up apologizing. You went to Auschwitz with Ben Shapiro.
Yeah.
Right? So you said you learned your lesson. What did you learn?
I said I learned my lesson.
You said you learned your lesson when you apologized, and you said you went to Auschwitz. You saw what.
No, I was already aware of these things, and the nature of my comment that really inflamed people. What I was trying to say, and I did very quickly clarify. This is what I'm saying: is that a number of prominent Jewish philanthropists fund groups that they should really take a closer look at funding, because some of the groups they fund, I think, are anti-Semitic.
So without calling Soros by name, maybe then Elon could explain what does Soros invest in, because that's what he means, right? Or that's whom he means. He was tweeting pretty open about it. This is on Elon's end. Nobody's that naive. You cannot connect incentives for people to be welcome to a certain state to increase number of seats and to affect the election this way with replacement theory. So he's not that naive. And if he sort of presents it all together as one idea, well, honey, that's not the same thing. So what is great replacement? And this is Wikipedia. Also known as replacement theory or great replacement theory, is a white nationalist far-right conspiracy theory exposed by French author that I can't pronounce. The original theory states that with the complicity or cooperation of replacist elites, the ethnic French and white European populations at large are being demographically and culturally replaced by non-white peoples, especially from Muslim-majority countries, though mass migration, demographic growth, and a drop in the birth rate of white Europeans. Since then, similar claims have been advanced in other national contexts, notably in the United States. So this is the whole idea of illegals are coming here, taking our workplaces, blah, blah, blah. So let's not mix it together with any illegals in states and seats in the House. Has nothing together with it. So trolling is good, using labels that are sort of spicy, right, and provoke attention. I mean, if we can learn from somebody, that would be Elon, and kudos to him, but that has nothing to do with that. So Let's review another video on this topic before we round this topic up.
Great replacement theory is a neo-Nazi trope. It's in the neo-Nazi manifesto. It's in the Turner Diaries. It's referenced by the Buffalo mass shooter in his manifesto, where 10 people, black people, were murdered in Buffalo. There's the actual title of the Christchurch Shooters Manifesto. 51 people in the Muslim mosque were murdered. 23 people murdered in El Paso by a shooter who used the same language that you use in that manifesto when you say Hispanic invasion. Is that not?
I didn't say an Hispanic invasion.
And you quoted a tweet that called it a Hispanic invasion.
If I quote something, it doesn't mean I agree with everything in it. It's just something that I think this is something worth people should consider.
Well, Elon is the most followed person on Twitter and most influential one. So if you tweet something, this is your opinion. And you can't really play with the idea that I'm a private citizen. I can say whatever I want to say because I have freedom of speech. Not really. You work with the government, you affect wars, you affect global politics, you affect so many internal things internally and externally. So you can't really sit on both seats and enjoy it. You're a private citizen or you're public, right? So if you throw something and you have such a strong, dedicated fan base that can only be compared to Taylor Swift, this will be discussed. And this will be discussed in the tone and in the way that you present it. Because there's some fanboys that are just agreeing with you by definition because they love you. And this is the key of fandom. Right? They're people who are just love others and they agree with anything they say, right? So knowing that, you have to know your responsibility. And especially now as the owner of this platform, let's not say that everything is freedom of speech. Hate was never freedom of speech, and playing with labels like, replacement theory and whatnot leads to something. Same as mentioning ketamine. Even if you mean it well, dig deeper. Okay, so now let's get into, so now we talk about the hate speech, and Don is doubling down on this as to how is Elon treating the point of hate speech here.
I have noticed community notes. I think that you are right about that, and I do think community notes are helpful. I think any type of content moderation, I do think that's helpful. You recently called content moderation, though, a digital chastity belt. Do you think that you believe that X and you have some responsibility to moderate hate speech on the platform?
I think we have a responsibility to adhere to the law, and we have a responsibility to be transparent about when things are shown, why they're shown. So that's why we open source our algorithm. I think once you start going beyond the law, now you're putting your thumb on the scale. And we don't want to put our thumb on the scale.
It doesn't concern you that hate speech has gone. Research shows that it's gone up on the platform since you took over. That's not concerning to you?
I believe that is false. In fact, the research that I've seen says it went down.
Okay, so I think the question here is that Elon actually sued the companies or nonprofits that did expose the hate speech going up, right? And then the research did show that not much has changed after the first claims, to the point where it is reported that hate speech continues to flourish on the messaging service, according to Center of Countering Digital Hate. The CCDH said Wednesday that X fails to remove posts that contain hate speech, despite being notified that the content violates the company's current hateful conduct guidelines, that we will be reviewing towards the end when we talk about advertisers. When Don talked to Elon about advertisers, I have researched, actually screenshot the rules at X that are describing what is hate speech and what are they prohibiting or what not. So that we're going to review later. But to say that you will be, by prohibiting something, you will be, kind of like changing the narrative. Yeah. But actually, this is your responsibility when you create a platform that you claim to be the most known one for breaking the news and being the source of news for so many worldwide, then it also could be and is a source of hate for so many worldwide. And I think it is important to pay attention to that. And this is actually more a moral issue than anything else. But I think here on Elon's end, especially when we start digging more into advertising, per Don's questions as we go with this, he on Elon's end, he kind of mixes moral issue, responsibilities with profitability, right? And so there is a business decision, and then there is a moral decision, and all of it is somehow connected by freedom of speech, which actually is not freedom of hate, right? So, and again, they have their own rules. So this part was not entirely true. It has been reported that hate speech goes up. I think everybody experiences it in a different form, in a different way. I think the biggest issue here, the war in Ukraine, so Russian bots, Ukraine, if you are speaking out on that topic, what I personally experienced, you are targeted by those who don't think alike. And so you will be sent all those pictures and hateful comments and messages. So this does, represent itself here. It manifests itself. Now, if you don't speak on some topics, or you don't even tweet anything or retweet anything, probably you wouldn't be, facing opposition, so to speak. So, that's the question here. So let's talk more then about, it was about DEI as the cause of lower quality of service. That was the next question that Don asked Elon. So let's review.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion. All right, that's been a target of yours lately on X. There was a repost of Ben Shapiro that you claim that DEI is killing people. Specifically, you point to medicine. You claim that DEI programs are putting people at risk. Do you really believe this to be true, and what evidence do you have to support it?
What I was referring to there was that if we lower the standards for doctors, such so that they, if the test for a doctor is lowered, then the probability of them making a mistake and killing someone is obviously going to be higher.
Wait, say that again. I'm not sure I understand what you said. I want to make sure I understand what you're saying.
Yes, if the standards for passing medical exams and becoming a doctor, or especially something like a surgeon, if the standards are lowered, then the probability that the surgeon will make a mistake is higher. They're making mistakes in their exam. They may make mistakes with people, and that may result in people dying.
What evidence do you have, though, that they're lowering the standards? There's no evidence of that.
I believe there is.
Racist much? Okay. So here we go. The significance of diversity, equity, and inclusion in healthcare. So DEI initiatives require time, effort, and equipment, and benefits are reported to be well worth it. So what is DEI? So diversity, equity, and inclusion, collectively known by the acronym DEI, is a set of policies or practices that promote the full participation and fair treatment of all people, including populations that historically have been underrepresented or subject to discrimination. Okay, so this is what DEI stands for. Now, why it is important specifically in healthcare. So these efforts have important benefits for all organizations, but the stakes are higher for healthcare organizations. Black and Hispanic patients report a higher rate of negative healthcare experiences. For instance, Black and Hispanic patients were more likely than white patients to report that their healthcare provider refused to order a test the patient felt they needed. Black and Hispanic patients report more difficulty finding a doctor of their race. People of color have overall worse physical health than white people. People of color experience higher rates of infant mortality and chronic conditions. LGBTQ plus individuals often encounter barriers to healthcare, and health disparities are costly. So now, what are the benefits of DEI in healthcare? So DEI efforts help to address these inequities in healthcare and patients' outcomes. In fact, DEI leads to improved patient care. An umbrella review of healthcare studies showed that, in general, patient outcomes improved when diverse teams provided care. So it also improved team communication and so on and so forth. There are some diseases that were not even discovered because there were just white doctors treating certain diseases and overlooking other. On that, I will have reports soon with the doctor who actually is specialized in that. So if you cannot provide a proof, let's not, mention something that it just sort of manifests in your head. Now, was Elon logical? Yes. If you want to let more people pass the test and hence you lower the standard of that test, yeah, you're going to have more or less educated people. Now, is this a fact? No. So let's not BS people just by feeding some certain narrative because it fits an overall picture that we're against immigrants or people of color or whatnot. So let's dissect it. And again, I'm not a fan of either or. I am not a fan of Don. I'm not a fan of Elon, but I'm a fan of digging deeper and doing research. So this is what we're doing here is just simple Googling. So I really encourage you to, first educate yourself before sharing further, because we live in this headline society or headline era where you read something, oh my God, it's provocative. Let's go ahead and share it. So now the next thing is we talk about trans rights and woke virus. Let's watch the first clip.
Let's talk about trans rights and the woke mind virus, because you've talked about that a lot. You're right about that a lot on the thing. You have been deeply outspoken about the issue of trans rights. You posted trans rights. You posted that pronouns and bio mean the woke mind virus ate your brain. Do you know what the term woke actually means?
It's come to mean a lot of things.
But what originally it was meant to mean. It's just being aware of inequities in society and being aware of facts and history.
Yeah, I think it's come to be. I think being aware of inequities in society is fine, of course, but trying to blame everything trying to make everything a race issue is, I think, divisive and corrosive to society.
Even as it relates to trans issues, which is what I'm.
Yeah, race or gender or whatever.
You think that society blames everything on racism now?
It blames a lot of things on it, and yeah.
You think that's unfair?
Yeah.
Why?
I think we should not make this a constant subject. I think we need to move on. I think we should treat people like people.
I'm a bit confused here how we go from pronouns and trans rights into racism, because those two things, yes, might intersect and do intersect, but they're not completely related. So I would first, what I would have preferred, honestly, if Don would have phrased this question as to a parent of a trans child, which Elon is, right? So I think from that perspective, it would have been more personal and it would have been more relatable to him. So since it was phrased in a more general, generic way, you got a generic answer, right? Now, if it was according to his situation, because that was reported, that was documented, and he is deep in that, so he did speak out against his own child. So how would that relate? I wish that was phrased this way. But why is it important to respect people's pronouns? Let's talk about this real quick. So you can't always know what someone's pronouns are by looking at them. Asking and correctly using someone's pronouns is one of the most basic ways to show your respect for gender identity. And I would end here. Okay? Regardless to what you think and what you support and what I support and what I think, if somebody tells you, call me this, let's just be simple as it is and pay due respect and call this person the way they ask us to call them. Period. Point blank. I think it's the moral issue. It's not the issue that I should be debating. Now, if we talk about, kids being introduced to this topic really early, this is a different topic for a different day. Now, if an adult comes to you or somebody comes to you and says, look, I prefer to be called this way, just do the due diligence and just do that. That's just a moral issue of respect, whether you support it or agree with it or whatnot. We all have different ideas. We all have different cultural backgrounds. We have different judgment. I'm from Eastern Europe. What do you think Eastern Europe thinks about certain issue? But you only grow when you open your mind to different ideas. But also, what is the key to aligning with other groups or with people who are not, your typical environment? Is actually paying respect and accepting them for who they are. Okay, so we're sticking more, or Don continues here more on the topic of racism here.
I think every country at that time, and I think even today, was extremely racist. Every country. And obviously slavery was present in about half of this country. And no, but was not present in the north. There was racism for sure, but I think we want to look to the future rather than the past.
There might be another reason for Elon to look to the future rather than the past. So, oh wait a second, wrong. Okay, here. That's hate speech. All right, I mislabeled. So anyway, he has several lawsuits pending that do connect to racism. So I'm certain that he doesn't want to talk about that topic at all. Also, he has the privilege not to bother about the topic of racism because it's a white male who's very dominant and rich and successful. Of course, everybody has their troubles and everybody had their past and current problems and whatnot. I'm not saying somebody's life is easier than any of us. We all are dealing with something. That's part of life. But to say that every country has been racist at some point, not really. Ethnically, yeah. There are isms that are in different countries. But this particular country has been built on racism. So to say that let's forget, move on, well, you have the privilege to think like that. And I might have, if you look at me, the privilege to start thinking like that. But again, to my point earlier, we can only grow and find common ground if we start listening to others and try to put yourself in their own shoes. Because I will never understand how a person whose ethnicity is connected to slavery or the background is connected to that would think to this. So to say, let's forget and move on, no. I don't think that's the way here, because you will be missing out on a lot of people who will be disagreeing with you and simply not speaking out because you are in that position and they want something from you. So that's just my two points. So dignity and realization of privilege, but maybe the real reason could be those court cases that are still pending. So there are several court cases. Why I don't know, the label doesn't show up here or the picture, that are pending, that are connected to Tesla and are pretty much connected to racism or the treatment of specific of people of color or people of specific groups. So I understand why Elon wants to move on from that. Okay. Now let's discuss what is that. Oh, okay. So we are going into advertising. So Don decides to finish up this interview talking about advertisers, sort of where he started. So he kind of tends to finish here as well. And then he gets even more so deeper. Again, it's more about the sense of this interview that I would like to discuss with you in a bit as well. So here's the last topic.
I believe, as you know, has made X less appealing to advertisers. About half of them have left the platform. You call advertisers that left X.com. You said they were oppressors. You've even gone as far as saying it publicly that they can go F themselves or go fuck themselves.
If they're going to force censorship on the company before advertising, then obviously I find that unacceptable.
You find it unacceptable. Why is that not a form of free speech? They are free to advertise where they want. They're not beholden to, they're not obligated to advertise on X.com.
Right.
So how is that not free speech?
They That's whereas the other platforms will censor on behalf of advertisers, the X platform will not.
So there is one thing is freedom of speech. Another thing is freedom to decide as an owner of a company to get into some business relationships or not, right? And this is what we need to understand here. Elon doesn't have to cater to advertisers, nor they have to work with him, right? And that, I think, is the state of affairs. And let's not mix the business structure or business strategy here, because if we are very frank, there is a big number of accounts on X specifically who gladly pay for those blue marks, right, to reach people, the same people who are banned from any other platform, because for what they share and what they say, they would not be allowed to do it there for good or bad reason. So X is sort of the exclusive platform for this demographic, right? Specifically, if you want to talk about politics or you want to talk about wars and whatnot, not the people I would, kind of endorse. But the point is, for them, this platform is already exclusive. Now, to the point where, and again, this is an income. And this is an income that you exclusively get from this demographic because they can't physically go anywhere else. Now, also a source of income is booking shows and making them number one show on your platform. And specifically, Tucker Carlson, I understand, as a journalist or whatever you call him, from Fox News. And he came in and he became the number one show with Elon's endorsement and his physical retweeting. Specifically, the episodes where he interviews mass murderer Putin, right? Who is persona non grata everywhere else. But he would retweet it and say, oh my God, it's interesting. Let's check it out. Let's check it out. So you push this content on your platform. Of course, advertisers would be scared to be near it. Now, if you are inviting now people from liberal media or, sort of Don Lemon, CNN and whatnot, and then still they have to pass some certain test here, and you decide not to, make them part of your shows that you keep retweeting and boosting, then you are setting your foot down for a certain part, right? So to say that it's all about freedom of speech and let people decide and community notes to, to comment, but you have you're holding your hand, like tap water, right? You decide how much water, how hot it is, and you decide when to open, when to close it. The same thing is here. You're holding your hand on algorithm. You do have responsibility. So let's not BS each other to say that you have absolutely no idea and it's all freedom of speech. Okay. So, but let's talk about the hate or whatever, what's defined between what is hate or hate speech and what is freedom of speech, because that was a question for me. Is everything allowed? Right? So here, the Supreme Court's decision provides an example of this legal reasoning. Under current First Amendment, hate speech can only be criminalized when it directly incites imminent criminal activity or consists of specific threats of violence targeted against a person or group. So specific acts of violence, something that provokes people to act upon something. Now let's dig into X or Twitter rules. What do they define as hate speech? So we prohibit targeting individuals or groups with content that references forms of violence or violent events where a protected category was the primary target or victims, where the intent is to harass. This includes, but is not limited to, media or text that refers to or depicts genocide and so on. Incitement. We prohibit inciting behavior that targets individuals or groups or of people belonging to protected categories that includes inciting fear, spreading fearful stereotypes, inciting others to harass members of protected category. But again, let's take a break here. If you are discussing the issue between Ukraine and Russia, you're facing this every day. I don't know about you, but I'm seeing this in my messages everywhere. So to say that it is prohibited and it's being blocked all the time, not really. Again, we know that it is not executed. So They go further to describe what slurs are. So we prohibit targeting others with repeated slurs, tropes, and other content that intends to degrade or reinforce negative or harmful stereotypes about protected category, right? It goes further. You can see in your account, by the way, I'm not making this up. So hateful images as well. So they discuss that, symbols that are historically associated with hate groups, images depicting others as less than human, images altered to include hateful symbols, references to mass murder, blah, blah, blah. So again, it all does exist. And we all see it when you get into discussing certain topics, specifically politics. So if this is considered hate speech, again, by X, then Don's point that hate speech is increasing has reason, right? Again, I would just say, if this is the rules that you put down, enforce them. And don't start talking about freedom of speech whenever anybody confronts you on this end. So there's another video on this topic, so let's dig in.
Don, I have to say, choose your question carefully. There's 5 minutes left.
Okay, but so
is this the question you want to ask?
The same question is, you said that they are killing the company, but you're the head of the company. The buck doesn't stop with you?
I acquired X in order to preserve freedom of speech in America.
So, what do you think? I mean, to say that the buck stops with him, yes, it does. And to my point, and it also might be a part of the business strategy to be that place for people to speak up who cannot speak up anywhere else. And this is okay, it's his platform, but then say it openly, right? Because we kind of know it is, with all due respect, right? Because there are people on the left who are speaking nonsense. There's people on the right that are speaking nonsense. So how do we balance this, right? I grew up in Europe. We are not having two parties and you have to, by birth, be divided into something and hate everybody else. Up until I was born in Ukraine. So up until the war issue, we never had, family split. But in 2014, my mother's side comes from Moscow. So in 2014, certain people would even speak to, those who are in Ukraine. So families started splitting up, which was really new, right? So that's sort of what I can relate to when it comes here. We have to be Republican or Democrat. And if you're neither registered, then you're not voting and all that kind of stuff. So, I think what does matter is voting for a certain candidate, seeing that how does this candidate address issues, which issues does this candidate prioritize, and what do they do? And you are entitled to your opinion. What I'm only asking you and suggesting you to do is to research what does your opinion is based on. Because if I would judge this interview just by the way, whether I like Elon or I like Don and whatnot, I would come to certain conclusions. But when I take the emotions away or my, predisposition, I start digging into issues. Now I'm seeing, okay, this is actually right. And this is actually, making sense. So start, getting more involved into research rather than distribution of certain headlines. That's the point. So now the very last clip is where I really have a bit of an ethical issue with Don. I don't know what was the point of it. So they were coming close to the interview. It's beyond 90 minutes that he was promised to get from Elon. And again, even though Elon seemingly doesn't like this interview, he's sitting there, he's giving an option. He says, look, we just have 5 minutes. Choose wisely which questions you're asking. And he starts digging deeper, where it gets very personal. Where I get the intention, I'm playing the clip now in a second, that sort of Don was thinking, oh, I didn't get that headline or I didn't get that hot thing yet. Let's push on that last minute. So curious what you think.
Okay. Listen, I'm not meaning to offend you. You're an intense person. Where does that intensity come from?
I was born that way. And I had a tough childhood.
You did?
So, yeah.
How so?
Right, Walter Isaacson goes into it in the book, and we only have a couple minutes left, so
all right,
too long to describe. So the one or two questions I can do, and then we'll have to call it.
Okay. Again, I don't mean to upset you. Why are you just...
No, I have a whole room full of people waiting to meet with me.
Okay.
So we're just going over time.
Okay. All right. I understand that.
I mean, it's kind of known, right, that Elon has had tough childhood, and that, his relationship with his father affected it. If you read his mom's book, you get all the details there. So again, it comes to research. But my point is, as much as Don says Elon knew who he's talking to, Don knew who he is talking to. And I don't know how you see it, but I always tend to, if I speak to a person and I sit down and want to interview people, I've interviewed over 400 people, obviously not this caliber, not putting myself anywhere near, but you kind of want to let your guest or the person in front of you to open up so you can have a discussion. If you come in with the energy to push somebody, especially another male, right, a very dominant one, will push back, right? If you start digging into personal issues where you talk about, drug use or prescribed medication and whether you abuse it and are you on something now and things like that, it gives us viewers, and tell me what you think, a taste that you're digging for something, you're digging for a headline. And why are you doing that? So altogether, what I can say, I have an issue with Elon's morals, and I have same issue with Don's ethics. That's how I would summarize it. I do see a moral issue on how Elon describes, certain things when it comes to respect and racism, woke virus, whatnot, right? But I also have issues with Don's ethics, as much as I described here. So what was your intention here? Which again, leads us to the point, who is the winner? So how it did affect Elon, it didn't know at all, right? If anything, it saved him money since he's now out of that contract. I don't think we learned something we have never learned before. How it does affect Don. And see, let's just go here one by one. So just a few steps. And I'll take just 1 minute of your time. So Don, allegedly, he received the contract where he asked for a signing bonus, 8 million a year or something like that. The first interview from space station, blah, blah, blah. And I guess the interview with Elon. So he did get that. He allegedly, again, he did not sign the contract, but had the first interview. So he had the head of the platform on the show in an interview that he dominated that caused cancellation, right? Same as Elon knew who Don is, Don knew who Elon is. And I think going with these questions and this sort of pushing into the interview and expecting that he will let it fly is really stretching it. I don't think anybody is this naive, right? So what did actually came out in terms of views and results, because we have to think about that as well. What my impression is that Don comes, of course, from CNN and mass media, where I believe, again, my only personal 2 cents, he came into the story really relying on his personality and his fame, also as much as he relied on Elon's fame for the first episode to be the promotion. So I have not seen any promotion of his YouTube channel or X or whatever, sign up here, no information whatsoever. So this interview should have been the thing, right? Okay. So to quote Richard Branson from Virgin, if you cannot pay to be on the news, you have to become the news. So what did happen with this cancellation and whatnot, he became the news. And he went on CNN and The View and all kinds of programs and, bloggers, YouTubers to discuss this cancellation. So the cancellation did promote this. Now, in terms of numbers, what it did result into, as far as when I checked, again, correct me, it was below 1 million on X. And again, it's not boosted, obviously, and it's not guaranteed. So Elon does have control over who sees that and whatnot. I'm not saying he affects it in any way, but it's certainly nowhere near to Carlson's numbers, right? When it comes to YouTube, and perhaps Don didn't know that, he didn't allow for that dislike button. And so every little buddy came to YouTube and started clicking the dislike button when the interview was pre-scheduled to premiere at 7 a.m. on Monday, the 18th. Before it even premiered, it gathered so many dislike buttons that algorithm is certainly on YouTube not really pushing it. So it's like 500,000 last time I checked. So again, relying on the media thing, providing the shorts and reels that are very cut together, describing a very provocative interview, which it was not really. So, and not having any promotion, not having anything like that. I think it's fair to say that it could have been the PR strategy, right? Knowing that Don is very experienced, very respected in his field on the left, right? So knowing all that he did prepare, he knew who he will be talking to think that he was so naive to push through and expect the contract to go through, and he didn't sign the contract either. I think it's fair to guesstimate that it could have been a PR thing on his end. I'm not saying it is. This is just my 2 cents. I'm curious to hear what you think about it. So, my whole point is we need to really remember to study and do the research, or at least do a little quick Google search before we're sharing something, before we're building an opinion, before we're doing something. Because this year we're voting. It's very, very important. Build your opinion and also account for consequences. Because I think also many people say, well, I'm not going to vote because it's either Biden, Trump, I hate both, I don't want to. All you do has consequences. And even not doing something is contribution to a certain result. So build your opinion, do your research, and vote for the candidate whose consequences and whose work you will be supporting. Okay? Not the, a clan or whatever, like a party feeling and you want to be part of it. It all fades in November, and then comes the reality. So what reality you want to live in. So let me know what you think. Let me know if it was useful. It took me all day, but can't wait to hear from you. So thank you so much, and see you back on Saturday. We'll be discussing more news. But rather than that, I wish you a good week. I hope there will be no dramatic news and views. But see you Saturday.